Greetings, Leica fans and Leica fam, and welcome Photoville people. Our Photoville audience, we're so happy to have all of you here today for another great program. We are so happy to have a special guest today and more programming here as part of the Photoville digital platform. And something a little bit special today for our presentation. So we'll get started in just a moment. We normally have an interview, but this one's a little different. Though, if you've ever had the privilege of joining us at Photoville in Brooklyn, New York, usually in person, you would know that we often love to give the platform to some amazing speakers and some amazing photographers, and that is exactly what we are in for today. So with today's guest, we have Cheriss May. Cheriss is a visual storyteller and adjunct professor at Howard University, which is also her alma mater in Washington, D.C., as well as an Adobe education leader. She trains and speaks to educators across the country while also photographing current events through news stories and portraits. Cheriss is passionate about visual storytelling and is an advocate for diversity and inclusion in the media industry, often commissioned to speak and advise on diversification initiatives. She's the president of Women Photojournalists of Washington and co-chair of the photography committee at the National Press Club. Cheriss has been published in a laundry list of publications that you all know, and some, for example, O Magazine, Essence, Time, the White House Historical Association, the New York Times, Bloomberg, ESPN, and other international publications as well. Her passion radiates through her aptitude to connect to the soul of those she photographs. And I am so glad to welcome Cheriss May to Leica Conversations in Photoville. Hey, Cheriss.
Hi, Antonio. Thank you for that introduction.
No worries. Thank you so much for doing this and for being here with us today. So I'm gonna get out of the way. No one wants to hear me talk, so I'm gonna step away and let you do your thing. You have an amazing presentation on deck for us, and then I'll be back at the end. We can have some chat over some questions from our audience. But in the meantime, everyone, I'll turn it over to Ms. Cheriss May.
Thanks, Antonio. Hi, everyone. I hope you all are safe and well. I'm Cheriss May, as Antonio said. I was born and raised in a conservative town called Kansas City, Missouri. I remember skateboarding, riding bikes, playing kickball, and catching fireflies with my friends, playing tag as the sun went down, and hurrying home when the street lights came on. I love my little neighborhood. We were family. Everyone looked out for each other. We flowed in and out of each other's homes like we all lived together. As you can see in the photo on the screen, I'm on the metro, I'm holding a camera. I'm on the metro in Washington, D.C. with my father and my brother. So you could say I was a photographer before I knew I was a photographer. When I was 8 years old, my family moved away for better opportunities to the suburbs of Kansas City. It was there that I was first called the N-word. Riding the school bus home from third grade, the most vile insults were hurled at my brother and myself. My first introduction to racism, not to be the last. My parents had to have the talk with us, one that other Black families are all too familiar with. The history of racism in our country, the world even, and how to navigate a world that would see the color of our skin first, and how there would be times, events, and places that would be unkind, hateful even, because of the skin we were born into. My parents raised us to move forward in spite of racism, to not be crippled, to work hard, do our best, learn more, work harder, just keep moving forward. I remember as a little girl loving all things creative. I love to draw, I love to paint, color, I love music. I remember always having a camera in my hand, taking pictures at family celebrations and events, excited to get my film developed so I could see what I captured. Each Christmas holiday, my parents upgraded my camera and my love for storytelling grew. I went on to take some elective classes in high school in photography. for fun, not thinking about photography as a career. I attended an all-girls Catholic school that was predominantly white. Shout out to St. Teresa's Academy. I remember one day at lunch, one of my white classmates told a story about how she could steal from stores when she went in behind black customers because the managers would be so focused on watching the black customers that they wouldn't pay attention to her. I knew after high school I craved something different, a significant change from my conservative city. I chose to attend Howard University in Washington, D.C., a historically black college and university known as an HBCU. It was here that I was immersed in my history and culture. I had professors who looked like me. Howard gave me the confidence and the understanding that I come from a long lineage of inventors, leaders, survivors, and fighters for equity and justice. I started my career in journalism as a graphic designer for a few newspapers, including the Washington Post and USA Today, during which time I was a part-time photographer and adjunct professor at my beloved Howard University. It is my work at Howard where I have the opportunity, and as an Adobe education leader, to share the possibility of being a visual storyteller as a career option. One of the first things I ask my new students is, what are you passionate about? What are those stories that are important to you? I'm able to bring my experience into the classroom. I'm able to share what it's like out there. I'm able to help them on how to navigate. During the second term of the Obama administration, I created a White House reporting program for our journalism students. They covered events at the White House. They wrote and broadcasted stories. Their work was published on our news service and picked up by over 200 African-American owned publications across the country. It was an opportunity for the students to learn storytelling firsthand during his historical presidency in the United States. When I was laid off from USA Today after 10 years, I decided to pursue photography full-time and continue to teach. I found my passion. And in this passion, my purpose for storytelling. I love telling those stories of marginalized people and issues, the stories of those hidden heroes that don't get the recognition they deserve. I love telling the stories of the intersectionality of political figures and structures and the everyday citizen in the community. I often find myself being the only Black photographer in spaces like the White House and Capitol Hill. There's a need for more diverse storytellers. Most major newspapers, magazines, and publications feature the work of white male photographers majority of the time on their front covers. The calls for those assignments don't come as often for women, Black, or photographers of color. I'm a Black woman, a visual storyteller and educator, an advocate for diverse stories and storytellers. My work centers on opening doors, calling attention to the disparities in the news and media industry in their representation of diversity and inclusion. I believe in the power of prayer, the power of words, and the power of the image.
Been taking these photographs, trying to make these moments last. I don't want you to ever fall in the past and float away. I keep these photographs. I tried to paint this picture so it won't go away. Spent a day in the mirror with the hopes to erase this pain. pain from yesterdays I try to keep away. Ain't that hard to remember all the love that you did? Got the month of December, 'cause your heart is a gift to me, and I'm trying to keep it that way. But I get these moments when it's hard to conceal some things from the past, where my heart never healed from these moments. But a smile from your face make my life so bright. Bad times stay away, and I want these moments to stay. So I've been taking these photographs, trying to make these moments last. I don't want you to ever fall in the past and float away. I'm taking these photographs. Caught a real good picture, kinda seems that it glows, makes my soul a little tender, like a blooming rose. You broke that frozen coat over my aching heart. Hey, baby, I'm a believer in the way that we've grown, and anybody can see that we ain't never let go. We stayed holding on, stay holding strong to love. Hey, but I get these moments when it's hard to conceal some things from my past, when my heart never healed from these moments.
A powerful image can not only stir emotion, but can evoke action. One image, without saying a word, wields so much power. The Obama White House often had events for youth of color. Some of those kids lived a few miles away, but had never set foot inside of the White House. During this time, they were able to see a president, first lady, and family that looked like them. Michelle Obama would often tell the kids, "You too can be the president. This is your house." I could see how powerful that was in the kids' eyes, as they were able to stand next to world leaders who looked like them, shake their hand, hug them, and make a connection, allowing them to reach beyond a what if to a reality of I can. Photos are a mirror of our society. They show the beauty of humankind, the stories of victory and triumph, and they also show the ills, the hate, and the tragedies. Visual documentation tells the stories that record our history, that is shared throughout our society and around the world. That's why it is critical to have diverse voices, so that the stories aren't one-sided, but that they represent us all. One day I was at a basketball game on assignment for ESPN, taking pictures, and I noticed a young Black boy about 10 years old playing on the sideline. I took some pictures of him and I went to talk to him and get his name. When I asked him his name, he said, "Am I in trouble?" And he looked so worried. But I never observed him doing anything wrong. This broke my heart. I can't tell you how many times when I'm out taking pictures, I've been approached by Black people who want me to take their picture. And what they want me to do is to see them. They want to see themselves and others to simply see them. They want to be acknowledged and respected. These experiences show me the need for diverse stories and storytellers. People need to see themselves in the full story, not just at times of unrest or negative stories. When the stories are one-sided, especially when skewed, there's a part of society that feels subordinate and misrepresented. One of my favorite images is the one you see on the screen of Michelle Obama, and I call it Hidden Figures. First Lady Michelle Obama hosted a screening of the movie Hidden Figures for military families at the White House. After the movie, she introduced the cast and the director for a panel discussion. I could feel the energy shift. And as First Lady Obama dropped her head and talked about the hidden figures that helped build the White House, it was a powerful moment that I was able to connect with. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. Dr. Maya Angelou. So I met Dr. Angelou. I was covering at the National Portrait Gallery her official portrait unveiling for the Smithsonian African Art Museum. At the time, she was sick. She was in a wheelchair with the oxygen tank. And it was myself and a male photographer back in the green room. So before they brought Dr. Angelou in, they came to us and they asked us, she has oxygen, it's in her nose. Can you just not take pictures while the oxygen is in her nose? So respectfully, I'm like, yeah, no problem. So when they bring her in and she has the oxygen in, the other photographer who was there just starts rapid fire taking pictures. So I felt the energy shift, and the sister girl in me felt the sister girl in Dr. Angelou. And if you ever saw that Simpsons episode where Homer just like walks backwards and disappears into the bushes, that's exactly what I did back there. And she just screamed, "Enough!" And they came and they escorted him out. So I'm standing in the back just trying to blend in with the wall because I didn't want to leave, because I hadn't introduced myself to her or had the opportunity to really speak to her. So I'm waiting for this energy to shift in the room. And just as I am getting up the courage to walk over and introduce myself to her, she looks over at me and she said, "Baby, what's your name?" So I walk over to her and I go to shake her hand, and she's holding my hand at this time. And I said, "Dr. Angelou, my name is Cheriss May, and it is my pleasure and my honor to meet you." And she said, "It is my pleasure and honor to meet you, Cheriss May." And she threw her head back and laughed. I then asked her if I could take her portrait, and she took the oxygen out and said, "Yes, you may." There are two pandemics ravaging our society: COVID-19 and racism. The two have converged on the streets and through communities around the world. There is a national reckoning on race and justice. Everyone saw the video of the murder of George Floyd in Minnesota, and the injustice in the case of Breonna Taylor. Here in Washington, D.C., I have been telling the stories of the uprisings and unrest. I've covered protests before, but this time is different. Previous protests have been majority Black people advocating for Black people. This time around, there are more white people out there. There are families, old, young, everyone. This time, young people are taking the lead, and they're organized. They have an agenda, action items, a plan, and I've seen some changes. I'm not sure if these changes are only for this moment or for a lifetime, but it's beautiful to see the advocacy for diversity and inclusion, the call to hear Black voices and to tell our stories. When I take off my press credential, I'm a Black woman. I feel a responsibility to tell the stories of the unrest and the demonstrations happening across the country. and why. I'm drawn to those quiet, powerful stories. It's hard, sometimes tense. It triggers pain, anger, and hurt from my own personal experience with systemic racism. When I'm out covering these stories, it's from the lens of a Black woman. I see myself in the protesters. I'm able to connect because I am them and they are me. That's my community. I'm faced with the same issues. This is my life. Tell your story. What are those stories that are important to you, your family, and your community? One day I got a call from my cousin Gianni. We talked about the current uprisings and demonstrations. He shared with me how his sons were having a hard time with all that was going on. His 8-year-old son, Middleton, feared that what happened to George Floyd would happen to he and his family. And his 5-year-old son, Caldwell, asked, "Why do white people hate Black people?" My cousin decided to organize a family march, and he invited friends with their children. And what started out as a small march of Gianni and Middleton in their neighborhood grew to a movement with his wife, Ashley, and son, Caldwell, joining with other families. And the number of people continued to grow each time they went out. And on that last day of the march, Middleton, who was apprehensive and fearful, led the way. What he discovered was that there were more people with him than there were against him. When I first came to their march, I brought my camera, and I saw an important story of family protest and those difficult conversations parents were having with their kids. I talked to other families there, and I went out with them over several days. The New York Times ended up publishing the story, and the Today Show picked it up. I had people reach out to me to let me know that they appreciated the story and that they could relate, and others who thanked me because it gave them inspiration. They too wanted to do something with their kids. And this is something that they could do in their own neighborhood. Tell your story. In a real sense, all life is interrelated. All men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I ask you today, what is it that you can do in your work, in your life, in your community? How can you advocate for others? I encourage us all to first listen and be thoughtful in decision making. Silence is not okay. We have to speak up and speak out. When you have opportunities to be diverse and inclusive, if not now, then when? Amy Vitale, a National Geographic photographer, reached out to me one day on Instagram. She complimented my work and said I was doing great work and that more people should know about it. Amy offered to share my voice on her page. She used her space and platform to introduce me to her audience. And as a result of her allyship, I have made great connections to share my story all over the world. My hope in this moment is when because people are more receptive to hearing diverse voices, that they use their voice in their space to advocate for equity and inclusion, and that it transcends beyond this moment and becomes a part of the fabric of our society. Thank you to Leica, Photoville, and every one of you who joined me here today. Thanks for having me.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much, Cheriss. This was such an amazing presentation. And first off, thanks again. And we've gotten some amazing comments in the chat from people. We see you all, by the way. People are deeply moved by your images, and we've got some great questions from our audience as well. Thank you for your questions, and please keep asking more questions. We can go through. You can ask more than one question. It's fine. There's no restrictions here. So, Cheriss, you have such an eye and such an amazing voice and message. And I want to take this opportunity to, again, thank you and for sharing this with us. And let's go ahead and let's dive into some questions. How about that?
Sure.
All right. So you mentioned going to Howard, and it's funny. Like somebody asked, like, how many photography classes did you take there? But before we get to that, were you a photo major? What was your specialization?
No, I'm actually self-taught. I took some elective type classes just because I enjoyed it. So I remember taking a class in high school where we made like the shoebox camera. It had the little tape on it and exposed it. And that was like my kind of first introduction to the darkroom, working with that. And then when I went to Howard, I took photography as an elective, but I was an advertising major. I wasn't even planning on a career in photography. I thought that I would be, I was an advertising major and an electronic studio minor. So I was looking at being a graphic designer and working with advertising agencies in like the creative services. But I always loved taking pictures, but I thought it was just, like a hobby that became a serious hobby. Little did I know that would actually be the career I landed in, and I haven't looked back since.
So it's kind of amazing. It's funny. Like I'm guilty as charged. I took photo classes thinking this is the way that you do photography and this is the way you get into photography. And it's like, you quickly learn how people come from all walks and come from all avenues. And sometimes, you know, if you have all this photo training, but then you start to be like, oh man, but I need to improve my writing, because these guys are great writers because they came with writing degrees and their photography is good. You know? Cool. Thanks again. Thanks for these questions, folks. Let's ask a few more. Let's go a little further to, you talked about your experience with, you know, photographing in and around the Obama White House and the amazing experience and unique opportunity that was. So we've got a question from someone that said, you know, you mentioned how you felt the energy shift during the Michelle Obama picture. Can you speak to how to be in tune with like kind of the vibe and energy of the environment when taking pictures, and especially when, you know, telling these kinds of stories?
Sure. So for me, it's very personal because I'm spiritual. And so a lot of that plays into how I approach. But a lot of it too is when I go out to, if I'm on assignment or I'm going out on my own, you know, working on personal projects, a lot of it is about going there first without even taking my camera out, without even turning the camera on, and just looking around and just kind of seeing what's going on, speaking to people, and just kind of getting the lay of the land, so to speak, but also making that connection with the environment that I'm in and people who are there. So then once I feel like I have like a good feel for that, then I'll turn my camera on and then I'll start, you know, taking those pictures. But a lot of it is the mindset going in that I want to do this justice and I want to tell this full story here. So let me not pull out my camera initially and just connect to that first.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it seemed like that informed you really well with the situation and the story you gave us about the Maya Angelou photo, right? That you had that awareness, and that, you know, by the way, love the reference of the Simpsons, one of my favorite scenes.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah, and one of the best memes today too. So, but yeah, that you read the room, right? And you have to be aware. And yeah, it's amazing sometimes how that pause of like, wait, don't take the picture yet, wait for that moment and see how things are shaping up. That actually kind of then leads into this other question from another attendee here. You mentioned you're spiritual. Do you have any kind of like mantra or something you think about when you're on assignment? Because you sometimes will have to photograph maybe people that you disagree with. You know, you have to be an observer, you know, as part of press. And is there something that, you know, you remind yourself of, whether it's from spirituality or just like, you know, it's the job? How do you approach that?
Yeah, honestly, some assignments are like kind of autopilot, especially when you deal with a lot of the political figures and things like that. Or if I'm, you know, certain hearings that are, you know, pretty much the same thing, just a different hearing, but it's the same process, it's the same feel. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those with like the some of those photojournalism assignments, I can at least say on the political side, is autopilot, unless there is like something major that's going on where there is like a strong emotion or mood, you know, going on. But otherwise, if it's like a press conference, those are typically autopilot, pretty automatic. And I just approach that from, I'm here to do a job. I'm reporting what's going on. So sometimes with those, I just kind of, although I'm in tune, I may tune out just a little bit and more focused on just making sure to try to capture what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine there's some where it's just like any, I guess in some ways, any job. I think when you're an outsider looking at it like photojournalists, it just seems like you know, it's such profound work, or we think of it as such profound work probably all the time. And it's fun to remind ourselves that sometimes I guess it's just the machine. It's just, you know,
Yeah.
like everyone has a day where maybe they're just like, I got stuff done.
Yeah.
It's whatever. Yeah, I hear you. Great. And again, more comments are flowing in, and just like, people love the gravity of your work, and really have a lot of admiration for what you're conveying here. So again, I just want to make sure people are aware. We see the amazing comments and all the love being shared. So we talked a little bit about you know, your early days. I think this is a really good question, where someone asked, what were your first steps into becoming a professional in the photography? You mentioned how, you know, you were at USA Today, and then you kind of had you had to make some pivots. What were your first steps, and maybe any advice you have for people today starting out in getting into photojournalism?
Sure. So two parts to that question. So the first part on how did I get started? I wasn't even thinking about doing like political or photojournalism work, but I had joined an organization called NPPA, and they had a number of workshops, classes, conferences, and also they had like a profile page where you set up your bio and you can upload some photos. And then, so I uploaded some things there to the profile, and I set up my own website, because I was taking all these pictures and they weren't photojournalism or political. It was more like portraits. And so I started to post my work. And one day I got an email from this wire photo agency in Rome. And they said that they were looking for someone to work with in Washington, D.C., to take some pictures of some events that were happening at the White House during the second term of the Obama administration, and if I would be interested to work with them in doing that. And of course I said yes. You know, I had never done that before, but, you know, I'm intrigued. This is like historical. So I said yes, and I covered like a press conference the first time. Mm-hmm. And then after I did that and they put the photos on the wire, they kept reaching out to me to do additional events. And it happened where I actually was going to the White House like 4 to 5 days a week. I was almost, you know, there pretty much every day. And as I started to do more work and it started to hit the wire and post, then I started getting calls from other agencies and publications to do work. What I would recommend, the second part of that question, mm-hmm. What I would recommend to someone who may be interested in that, there are a number of things. Like organizations like I joined NPPA gave me invaluable information on kind of how to navigate or what to expect by attending some of the classes, conferences, and having portfolio reviews. Mm. And then also another thing is to have good mentors. So I have a mentor, his name is Fred Watkins, who had been a long time ebony and jet photographer. And he gave me a lot of tips, which I think traditionally I don't know how it is like in other areas of photography, but in terms of like photojournalism, to me, the information just wasn't like free flowing like that in terms of like sharing that information. And so he shared a lot of his tips and wisdom with me that helped me to kind of know what to expect and how to navigate, because there's no handbook to say like, this is what you do. I can also remember like the first time I went to the White House, like I didn't know like how to move. Like, what can't I do here? What can I do? Like, I didn't know.
Right, like no sudden movements, right? It's like
yeah, I'm like, you know, you see snipers on the roof, and I'm like, okay, like, so do I stay in this little area here? Like, I don't want any problems. So some of that was just kind of being quiet, observing, and seeing how it goes, taking notes. And then there were some people who were, you know, nice enough to share some of that information with me as well. Because I can remember being there one time where someone had come there for the first time, and they stepped on they went on to the North Line, which is on the front, at the front of the White House. Mm-hmm. As soon as they like got to the grass, like Secret Service is like out, like yelling at them, like converging on them, because you're going into territory you're not supposed to be. It was like, so then when I saw that, I was like, oh, so I'm not supposed to go over there. Like now I know. So the mentors, organizations, and then just practicing your craft and just continuing to do the work, continuing to look at ways where you could get better in different classes. Like I said, some of these organizations have conferences and portfolio reviews. So those things certainly helped me navigate.
That's some fantastic advice. I love that because you mentioned the importance of mentors, and portfolio reviews. It's one thing, I think for those, if you took, classes, or for those people in our audience that, took classes in photography, you should be used to, like critiques, right? And being able to receive that criticism and critique, constructive criticism, I say, especially from, in what is, should be a safe and respected space. And is more than just, showing it to friends and family who a lot of times are just be like, oh, that's a great photo. Like, I like it, kind of thing. It's like, I like it is like not that helpful, but yeah, no, fantastic input. And I'm sure as you like, did you see that like even on the job then, like, where people is the photojournalism community, like the community of photojournalists welcoming and approachable on average? Or do they tell, oh, hey, new kid, like, yeah, don't cross that line, like, don't, like...
Well, thankfully there were some that would, that were welcoming and gave me information. But for me, like as a whole, it's kind of like you're just kind of like going through and not really knowing how to navigate. And some people won't say anything to you, and they'll just like let you like do something that they know like you're not supposed to do. Or
right.
But then I did have some that were actually like kind of gave me some information and some tips, but a lot of it was learning on the job. And just like I said, just being quiet and observing until I felt like I knew what was going on and what I could do and what I couldn't do. So then I could navigate a little better.
Yeah.
But it depends also on what's going on, because certain events, there's different protocols for all the different events. So you may be able to do something at this event, but at this particular event, you can't do that. So okay. It's that whole thing as well.
Gotcha. So that leads to another great question from our audience. To kind of shift gears to talk about, so you mentioned how photographing, like, yeah, stuff at Congress and the White House, and all the environment you have to adjust to shoot in those situations. Now you obviously, we have photographed a lot of protests, and I think people are always wondering. I saw one question as well about how do you protect yourself, because unfortunately sometimes things can kind of go south at a protest that's peaceful, and sometimes there's some kind of a disruptor, and we've seen what's happened in recent months, unfortunately. And also in terms of your visual storytelling, when you're at a protest, and this is a question from our audience, do you value, or do you find it super important to talk to people? And you've captured some very powerful moments within the protests. And for example, the two men embracing, the mom and her kid on the grass is very, like, kind of a different moment than we're used to seeing. So do you talk to people first? How do you work that, as opposed to maybe some photographers who kind of just stand back, maybe use a slightly longer lens and kind of get a different perspective?
Sure. Great question too. It depends. Like, it varies depending on, and this again speaks to what I was talking about in kind of connecting to the environment and the emotion that's going on.
Yeah, it's all related, right?
Yeah. So the black and white of the two black men hugging, there was right before that, one of the men was at the top of the traffic light, standing at the top of the traffic light. He had climbed up there. He had a bullhorn, and he was talking to the crowd. And right before that moment, I was about to leave. I was about to go to my car. I was done for the day. And as I'm walking in the direction to go towards my car, I feel like that shift. And I look over to the left and I see him up on the traffic light. So I go over to see what's going on, took some pictures of that. And then there was one guy who was like agitated down there. And so he starts to like yell up at the guy that's on the traffic light. And he was saying, this is stupid. I don't even know what this is about, talking about the protest. And so the guy that was at the top of the traffic light, his name is Mike D'Angelo, I came to know. Mm-hmm. And he comes down from there and he goes to speak to the guy to try to explain to him what the purpose of the protest is. And the guy he was just agitated. It was nothing, anyone could say to like calm him down with that. And eventually so at that moment when he came down to talk to him, I was actually standing like right next to them. So part of it was like, this could go really south really quickly and could be dangerous because there was so much like tense emotion there. And so I had a decision to make, either leave or stay. And, I had to make I made a quick decision to actually stay. And I'm glad I did, because the agitated man left. And so the other guy you see in the picture hugging Mike didn't know him. They were strangers. And he just came over and they embraced and hugged. And for me, those are those quiet, powerful stories in the midst of like the tense, in the midst of, agitation. You have this beautiful, powerful moment of these two Black men hugging. And for me, what I saw was, I could see where Black men are often not looked at as being sensitive, not looked at as being supportive like that. So as I'm standing right next to them and they come up and hug and I take that picture, it like spoke really strongly to me, because I said, this is showing that sensitivity and that support that they don't talk about Black men having. So for me, that like just hit me very, very deeply, because here are these two strangers. They did not know each other, but they're embracing in this hug. And, they hugged for a minute. Like, it wasn't like a just quick hug. And it really spoke to me. So I'm glad that I didn't leave. And a lot of that is, when somebody asked about safety, it is a concern. In some instances, I have a helmet, I have goggles, I have, some other precautionary things, but a lot of it is, you should really have a partner out there with you, someone that, because a lot of times if you're like focused on your camera, you might not see what's coming from the side or behind you, or something in that, and things can happen in an instant, in a moment. So to have someone there or know people there who are able to, alert you to those things or look out for you, is very helpful. Sometimes you don't have that and you're there by yourself. So like I said earlier, I believe in the power of prayer. So I do that before I even go out there. And then, from there you have plans, like if something does happen, this is what I'm going to do, or, certain places you park so that you're not caught in like the circle of what's going on, that you're far enough out that you can, if you do need to get out, you would be able to.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's like, bring a buddy, have an emergency plan.
Yeah.
Actually, I see someone in the chat even said have an emergency plan. I mean, it's fun, those are good tips if you're participating in a protest, if you're photographing a protest, if you're just
Sure.
going out to take some landscapes, you know, like it's be safe.
Yeah.
So great tips all around. But I thank you so much for sharing that story behind that photo, because I felt that that photo on its own is powerful, and hearing the background and the telling of the story behind it, wow, makes it even really more hit home. And it tells me how you really captured such a human moment. You know, and it's, you know, when you're talking about how the guy being at the top of the traffic light and then getting this argument, and then like that, I bet that hug was the best thing ever, because I bet it needed it, because it's like, if you've had that stressful, if you ever got into a real argument with someone, it's like afterwards, especially if you don't feel any kind of resolution, it's like every emotion is like, every nerve is firing, you know, it's like you could work retail and have that feeling, you know, like, and it's just like, I could use a hug right now, you know. But it really is such a beautiful moment that you showed. So and thank you for sharing the story behind it. Now that image, I'm going to shift gears here to look, because we've got some questions about cameras and
Okay, sure.
stuff. That moment was in black and white. You have a variety of images in color, some here, black and white, some here. So one of our audience members asked, do you decide at the moment when you're shooting black and white that something, or when you're shooting that it will be in black and white or color, or is it something more on your back end that it's kind of a thought later? How do you know, I feel like everyone always wonders if there's kind of a good solution for that, or where they should be thinking about their images.
And great question. To be honest with you, I don't know ahead of time. Like sometimes I'll put it in monochrome, because I don't have a monochrome camera, but I'll put it in that mode.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I do it in post. Like I may take an image and it's in color at first, but then when I pull it up, to me, like black and white is just going to be more powerful, because I want to strip away any distraction of color and really focus on that. So that particular photo was actually shot in color, but when I got home to edit, I was like, this is a black and white, period. So some of that comes in post. Some of it is ahead of time. I may, switch it to monochrome and shoot that way for a certain period of time. So it just depends.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you mentioned that you're not using a dedicated monochrome camera, which would be the Leica M monochrome, but people are asking, what's your go-to camera? What are you normally using?
So I'm using the M10R. Yep. Somebody, Eric, please.
Latest and greatest.
The M10R is my go-to. And, for me, it's like, especially with covering, doing this work, it allows me to move around and navigate better, because the size of it is so small that I could get into places that I wouldn't be able to get to with like a larger DSLR. And I can kind of move and shift certain ways I wouldn't be able to, with that larger kit.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I mean that camera has fantastic color, but also the anything black and white coming out of the camera is still great. Someone mentioned actually RAW plus JPEG helps, and of course I'm sure you shoot this way. It's like you can see the JPEG black and white as you shoot it, but you have the RAW for color later on, which is always helpful.
Well, sometimes I don't have that luxury, because some agencies I work for, you have to do it strictly in JPEG.
Ah.
Yeah, so it's no RAW to it's all JPEG, because when you are uploading, downloading, JPEG is going to be so much faster than RAW is going to take, just a little bit more time to process. And like speed and time is the name of the game. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Strictly have to do JPEG. But if I'm working on a project, or I'm shooting myself, or certain publications don't have that stipulation, then I will do raw JPEG.
Gotcha. Yeah. So when you're doing that, when if a publication is strictly JPEG only, is there any kind of like any anxiety versus it's like sometimes like, well, it's like when you shoot raw, sometimes you can kind of take for granted like the fix it in post,
Yeah.
But JPEG, do you feel like you got to nail it?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. There's a little bit of give, like a little bit, but you pretty much have to nail it. So, you have to have it set properly to be able to have some viable photos for this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. There's no underexposing by like 4 stops and pushing,
No,
the JPEGs.
not at all.
Yeah,
No.
I hear you. Awesome. That's we love to get some gear talk in for
Yeah.
all us nerdy ones. So someone else asked also though, like we've seen obviously this is all your professional work, and this is some heavy content. Are you the type that will bring a camera with you wherever you go? Do you take a lot of pictures personally, or is there time, especially these days?
It depends. Like I'll tell you what, like I got caught in the trap of taking a camera with me all the time. Of you would come to like social events and it's like, oh, since you're here with your camera, you can get some pictures. And it's like, did you contract me to get pictures or So
Right.
I kind of like after so much of that, certain social situations, I would just kind of leave my camera and I would have my phone if I wanted to, get something quickly. But a lot of times outside of that, I am because you just never know like what you may come across or run into, or I may see something. And so I'm pretty much, I'll have it, majority of the time. But if it's like certain social situations, then I'll leave it home.
Gotcha. No worries. All right. So we're winding down soon, but we've got so many great questions. Thanks everyone. There's been a lot of questions. I'm sorry we can't get to all of them. And there's been some great talk in the chat and some great questions in the chat as well. So I'm doing my best to parse through them. I'm going to give you one more question, which is actually coming in from someone who says they're tuning in from Germany. And by the way, for everyone here, this will be posted later on YouTube as well at full length. So if you want to share the video with someone, you can on the Leica Camera USA YouTube page. So what's your recommendation for having a powerful, inclusive mindset if you're not in the middle of the action? What advice do you have for people that care about the message you're talking about, care about this the movement, and whether through their photography or maybe through other actions they feel like they have trouble finding their voice to help? What's your advice for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a lot of that, if you're talking about a photographer who is asking this question, is you really do have to like find your purpose and your voice in it. And maybe it's sometimes you're sharing your platform with those photographers who are out doing it, and you're sharing that work and getting the message and the story out. Other than that, it's about just finding what you're passionate about and how you tell stories. So for me, I gravitate to those like quiet moments. Even if there's like a lot going on, it's busy, I always gravitate to something that's going on the fringes or in between something, where it's not like what's in your face, but kind of what's on the sideline. So I think once you kind of figure out, you find your voice and figure out how you like to tell those stories or what you're good at in terms of telling those stories, then the other things it'll be revealed to you, like where you need to go, what you need to do. Because when we talk about the coverage of the uprisings, I've seen so many different voices in that. You have some who are getting the action with police and protesters. Then you have some who are doing these like really nice kind of feature portraits where they're spending time talking to people who are there and just kind of finding out who they are and why they're here and what are they doing. And then for me, like I said, it's those kind of on the fringe, sideline, in between quiet moments that speak to me.
Got it. Yeah, no,
What speaks to you?
Yeah, that's if there's one thing that you can take away from this, everyone here, that those final words. Find what speaks to you is fantastic. So thank you for that final question asker and our audience. And thanks to everyone for asking such great questions. So we could pick Cheriss's brain and get just a little bit of her advice and input. So if you want to see more of Cheriss's work, be sure to check out her Instagram at Cheriss May. Cheriss, you did mention, I believe it was Amy. Someone asked if they can get a shout out for her Instagram as well.
Oh yeah. Well, her name is Amy Vitale. That's Vitale.
Cool. So check her out on
And Amy is AMI.
AMI. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm sure check out Cheriss's Instagram. I'm sure you can find Amy through there as well. And also cherissmay.com. Check out her website and see more of her work there as well. Cheriss, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been enlightening, inspiring, and it was a joy to hear your words. They were very candidly very poetic and inspiring. So thank you again.
Thank you again to Leica, Photoville, and everyone who joined in today. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks. And we'll see everyone again soon. Photoville and Like Conversations. Until next time, be safe, be healthy. Take care.